Hagar's story is one of resilience, faith, and divine intervention. It begins in the household of Abram, later Abraham, a wealthy nomad chosen by God to father a great nation. Hagar was an Egyptian servant in the household of later Sarah, Abram's wife. Her life was one of servitude, defined by the whims and decisions of her masters. At the time, Sarai was barren, a devastating condition in a culture that valued women primarily for their ability to bear children. Desperate to fulfill God's promise to Abram of countless descendants, Sarai decided to give her servant Hagar to Abram as a concubine. This arrangement, though culturally acceptable, was fraught with emotional and spiritual complexities. Hagar's consent was never sought, and her life was irrevocably altered. Hagar conceived a child with Abram, and her status within the household shifted. She was no longer merely a servant. She now carried Abram's heir. This newfound position bred tension between her and Sarai. Sarai, feeling threatened and jealous, mistreated Hagar to the point that Hagar fled into the wilderness. Pregnant and alone, Hagar wandered, likely fearing for her survival and the life of her unborn child. It was in the wilderness that Hagar encountered the angel of the Lord, a divine messenger who found her by a spring of water. The angel's words were both comforting and challenging. He acknowledged her suffering and instructed her to return to Sarai and submit to her authority. This command must have been difficult to hear, yet it came with a promise. Hagar's descendants would be too numerous to count. The angel also revealed that her son would be named Ishmael, meaning God hears. For the Lord had heard her affliction. Reassured by this divine encounter, Hagar returned to Abram's household and bore Ishmael. However, the tensions within the family did not dissipate. Years later, when Sarai miraculously gave birth to Isaac, the son promised by God, the dynamics grew even more strained. Sarah, as she was now called, became fiercely protective of Isaac's inheritance and demanded that Abraham send Hagar and Ishmael away. Abraham, distressed but obedient to God's guidance, provided Hagar and Ishmael with provisions and sent them into the desert of Beersheba. When their water ran out, Hagar placed Ishmael under a bush and moved away, unable to bear watching her son die. In her anguish, she wept and cried out to God. Once again, God responded. An angel of the Lord called to Hagar from heaven, assuring her that God had heard Ishmael's cries and reiterating the promise of a great nation descending from him. God opened Hagar's eyes to a nearby well, providing the water they desperately needed. Strengthened and sustained, Hagar and Ishmael survived and thrived in the wilderness. Ishmael grew up to become a skilled archer and the father of a great nation, fulfilling God's promise. Hagar's story is a testament to God's compassion and faithfulness. Despite being marginalized and mistreated, Hagar was seen and heard by God. Her encounters with the divine not only sustained her physically, but also affirmed her worth and the significance of her role in God's plan. Hagar's journey reminds us that no one is invisible to God, and his promises extend even to those who feel abandoned or overlooked.